Hello and a very crisp welcome back to the garden. This morning we finally had our first official hard frost of autumn right at the tail end, which means it's kind of the end of the growing season. And I want to talk about my 3 goals for what I'm going to focus on next year, because I'm going to use winter to prepare for that, and also some other ideas that I've had that I want to implement in this garden. For me, the end of the growing season isn't actually too sad. I very much ease into winter and I'm taking down these Jerusalem artichokes. And the reason why it isn't very sad is because I instantly get excited for next year, for the next growing season. And truth be told, I'm a little tired after quite a busy spring and summer. So I love the slowing pace and a change of focus into brainstorming and creating ideas and dreaming about what I can do differently next year. The first thing I want to focus on more next growing season is growing at least 2/3 of my crops using heritage varieties. I found over the last few years it's been really easy for me to just settle into growing the varieties of crops that I know work well. But I can't help thinking that I'm missing a trick and actually growing things that might be much better suited to my climate and to my needs and my goals. And whilst there are so many new modern varieties of vegetables being produced, I can't help but think that heritage varieties, which firstly have a history, a story behind them, might actually be what we're actually looking for, and that we're becoming too detached from what we used to grow, what our ancestors used to grow, by just getting caught up on trying to grow the most productive tomato that might actually not taste the best. I'd rather grow for flavour. I want to have the most tasty vegetable garden possible, and I think heritage varieties is where I'm going to find the best opportunities for that. When I hear of stories of seed catalogues many years ago having 200 different varieties of cabbages to choose from, for example, and now we might only have 10 or 20, I think that proves just how much opportunity we could be missing. And the other important thing about supporting heritage seed varieties is you're keeping them going, you're keeping that history and tradition alive, and you're also supporting smaller scale seed producers who tend to care a lot more about heritage varieties instead of the much larger seed producers who are just so intent on getting their own varieties which they can own and make as much money from. Now, of course, the other benefit of growing heritage varieties is that if you like them, you can save their seeds because they're not hybrids. As long as you save them from seeds using the right methods, you'll be able to grow them time and time again. Those are the core reasons why I'm going to be doing a lot more in terms of heritage vegetables and varieties next growing season. And because I'm playing with the long game in mind, I'm willing to sacrifice productivity in the quest of actually finding those really special varieties that become a core part of this garden. So why don't you think to yourself, what few vegetable varieties could I grow that I could look for a heritage version that really excites you? Because if it turns out well, chances are it's going to become one of your staples. So my second goal for the next growing season is to actually continue searching for the more unusual and exotic crops that I could potentially grow in this garden. Now, of course, they're not going to be super suitable for our climate, but by using things such as undercover growing and being clever with the seasons, there could be so many things that could hold potential in terms of producing food. Right now what I'm doing, I'm clearing away this ochre, which is also known as New Zealand yam. It's dying back because of the hard frost. And this is one of the first unusual varieties of vegetables that I grew, and it was great. It was tasty, productive, and now it's become a firm favourite that I grow every year. One of the foundational rules of self-sufficiency is to grow things that you actually enjoy eating. And there could be so many crops out there that you've never tried that could suddenly become one of your firm favourites, and you'll never know unless you give them a go. And that's something that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to look at what other crops exist out there in the world that I can grow that get me really excited year on year. So I'm not just sticking with growing all of the normal staples, I'm actually adding a lot of flavour and a lot of interest, which makes me more excited for each changing season. What I've come to realise is that my strategy of self-sufficiency isn't about growing bulk food of everything and then looking at how I can preserve these massive gluts, but actually about how I can have as wide of a variety of different flavours and crops through all 4 seasons. And by utilising that variety of perhaps having less of each individual thing, but more choice. And when I have more choice, it means that there's more things to look forward to and more things to change and adapt and also pair together when it comes to cooking. So my third goal for the next growing season is something you're probably not expecting, is actually doing more wood-based DIY projects here in the garden. It's something I've been missing for a fair few years, and I'd love to get a little bit more involved with creating permanent structures that aren't bought as a kit, because there's something so satisfying about creating lasting things with your hands. So whether it's trellises, arbors, benches, shelving units, clever types of raised beds, all these kind of things, they're going to be one of my big projects over this winter and into spring to really try and help set up the next growing season and add a little bit more interest in and around the garden. So those are the 3 main areas that I want to focus on next year. But of course there are other little goals that I have. At the moment I'm harvesting some kale. This one actually right here is Hungry Gap kale, which perfectly links me into one of the other goals that I have, which is actually growing with a lot more focus and intent on creating a wider variety of crops available to harvest during the Hungry Gap. One of the things that I've been making the most of recently is a planting that we've done of wild garlic, and that has been one of the best bits of the Hungry Gap. But I'm sure there are many other crops and plants that I can really utilise to actually turn that period of scarcity into somewhat of a period of abundance. Something I felt has let me down a bit as a gardener is not making the most of undercover spaces like this. This is easily the most valuable space. I think these beds are like 2 or 3 times more valuable than any outside growing space at least. You know, you can see all these crops as well growing at this time of year. So what I want to do in the next growing season is to really focus on trying to make this space as productive as possible, and I think the biggest part of that is being very clever with interplanting and relay planting. And I'm just going to push the limits and see what is possible, because even if I sacrifice some harvest next year, I'll have a really good idea for what to do in 2023 to get so much food out of this space. Now of course there's one garden goal that never changes every year, and that's about constantly making little strides to improve the soil health and fertility of my garden beds. And now is a perfect time of year to prepare your raised beds for winter. There's a video right here that shows you how simple it is, all of the little steps to make sure that your bed is nicely prepped and ready for springtime next year, where you really hit the ground running and really guarantee a successful abundance in summer.